when someone has a static, rigid understanding and perspective, that's what it has to be. Like, their life is them, so they are their life. So their life can't be anything else. It has to be static, rigid, dead. I don't know. So, like, when say the thoughts of a person are going somewhere, I guess one angle of how a person...
well, I think it's kind of... I don't know what I'm trying to say, but, like, they're creating what they're seeing, or, like, they're, you know, they can't see anything else, so how are they going to have something else?
Like, it's hard to find the terminology for it, but almost like... So somebody who... say somebody asked that question, like, somebody asked me, how are you enjoying your thoughts? Like, how are your thoughts these days? And it's like, yeah, I'm enjoying them. I'm happy, whatever. Like, that implies, in a way, in like some kind of offshoot way, that it is possible to change one's thoughts, or to look at the thoughts and look at how one is about those thoughts, and be like, I can change the way I am about my thoughts.
Right.
And that the thoughts can change without me changing the way I am. As if they are separate things and they are malleable so that the things can go.
Uh-huh.
Which is like the willingness to change. It is kind of loosely implied in that kind of concept. And a lot of why like most of the world does not phrase things that way. Like, how are you? Are you enjoying your thoughts? And like the concept of like, hey, how are you doing? Isn't referring to how is your state of being with the contextual stuff that you're going into in the world and what you're paying attention to. The reason that phrase isn't like looked at that way is due to the lack of, not just the lack of understanding that that's possible, that thoughts are malleable and I'm malleable and those are separate entities, or like, you know, it's a playground at all, but also because the mentality that most people do have with their thoughts is very rigid and static and dead. And when something is very rigid and static and dead, and they are exactly that, like they are their life, like how they are is rigid and static and dead, then of course it's not malleable. Of course it's not, like, even the concept of that I can change, let alone the willingness to change, can't even be there because of the rigidness of the person. That makes sense? Like if I'm...
I kind of zoned out.
Oh, if I'm like, if I'm like happy with the way, like I'm enjoying my thoughts, I'm enjoying things, and I'm moving around, and it's like I like those, I don't so much like those, so I need to give my energy here. And then when I do think about that, I can be like, oh, I can still be happy despite thinking about these things. Like, oh, those thoughts came to mind, and be like, well, I learned a lesson from them, or like whatever it is.
Yeah.
Or like that's stuff that I'm not looking forward to, but I got to do it.
Well, when we were saying earlier, it's like, are you liking your negative thoughts? Well, negative just is perception on whatever's there. And so you could say, well, I had a negative thought, but actually I learned something from it, and so it's actually a positive thought.
Yeah, like everything is positive technically, but people don't see it that way because they don't understand. That's another huge pile. But so to look at all thoughts and how one is, and just be like, I'm gonna like life is this malleable soup that I can move myself around and think anything and feel any way about anything, and like it's all this playground of the universe and state of being and all this stuff, and thoughts are part of the context, the circumstance is part of context, etc. When a person is not, when a person is rigid and really static with their perception of life, like their entire perspective is this like static dead thing, like things are this way, there is no other way. Like, you know, this is right, this is wrong, this is bad, this is good, etc., etc. Which is the way
with anything.
Yeah, which is the way most people do look at things. It's like this, not just the duality, but all the implications in that of like there are positive thoughts, there are negative thoughts, and it's like none of that makes sense.
Or negative
and it's a vague
circumstances, thing. Positive circumstances.
Yeah, like obviously, the universe doesn't make mistakes. You cannot overstate that. We can say that to about almost every single statement that anybody says. It's like the universe didn't screw up. It's like, oh, that's so wrong, or oh, they're bad, or they shouldn't have done that. It's like they did. The universe is. You can't argue with the universe. Like you're part of it. You're within it, and you're just experiencing it. and you're suffering because of your lack of understanding of what's going on. And it's like that simple. And when a person is so rigid in that, like static and dead, that's the only way that you can think that something is wrong or right. Like that is you can't think something is wrong or right unless you have like found a rigid position and think that that is such a case. Because if you weren't rigid anymore and you looked at something and were like, I didn't like that, I like that, or which is essentially what that's right and that's wrong is, you would be like, oh wait, my perspective is malleable, so I'll just shift it to over here to look at it from like another angle, another framework, move all these things around, even like zoom out for a broader scope, look at the stuff and be like, cool, that happened and who knows, because all the things in the like that people have thought have been right or wrong in the past eventually kind of flip on their head sometimes. There's like this really good thing that happened ended up cascading and causing a bunch of things that other people thought were bad things that happened later. This bad thing that happened actually opened the door and gave opportunities for people to think of things in different ways and ended up in a bunch of good stuff. So it's like, what is good, what is bad, and it starts to not make any sense just from zooming out in a broad perspective, let alone just changing the angle to look at things from other sides. But if you're rigid, which most people are when they get, start to develop those biases and kind of stop learning the way a child does, then it makes sense that...
having a bias is rigid, just like by definition.
Yeah, and like it makes sense that when somebody is like that, it makes sense that, one, people don't ask, are you happy with your thoughts? Or are you enjoying your thoughts? It makes sense that that's not a question, and it makes sense that when people do ask something similar to it, like how are you doing, they're thinking more the circumstances.
How are the circumstances?
I'm sad or I'm happy.
Are you? Were you reacting in a positive way or in a negative way today?
Yeah, like
reacting being the key component there.
Yeah, so it makes sense that like one, there are questions that people don't ask each other, and two, the things that people do ask each other are looked at a certain way, because that rigidity locks things in place. That why would you ask a question that implies the complete malleability of state of being in the universe as a playground if you've locked yourself in a static thing where that can't be the case? So
yeah, that makes sense.
So don't be static, rigid, or dead. Don't. It's bad. It's wrong. Make sure that... Okay. Locked again.
Yeah.
Which it's funny, layers and steps up there. It's
yeah.
Like, I gotta find myself. That's a lot static, dead, rigid thing, but it's a little more malleable than ones below it. It's like every layer all the way up until it's like,
especially if
I gotta find enlightenment. It's like that's a static, rigid, dead thing, but it's at least in the right direction.
It's like the more more brand like or broad, and the more you're like, I gotta find myself, but I have no clue what that is.
Yeah, the more the
better you're going.
Yeah, like, that's the dilation.
I have to get to enlightenment, but what is that?
I want enlightenment.
Yeah,
and then I'm just gonna dilate that out to be like, all right, the universe.
Yeah,
there's so much crap. I'm just gonna do my best and like answer the questions that I think I can answer as best I can.
Yeah,
and that's it. It's like I am where I am. We are where we are. The universe is exactly what it is. Where do we go from here? And like the more that dilates up to that, the more options just open up.
Yeah.
But the scarier that is, because like I used to be rigid and static and dead, and it was like this is right, this is wrong, this is my option.
Totally.
This is the bad option, that's the good one, I can decide.
Yeah.
And when it dilates open and suddenly you have all the options and none of them are good or bad.
Yeah.
And it gets scary, and then people dilate back down. It's like, okay, this is the right thing to do. And if it doesn't work, then attachment and reaction, because it didn't work, or it did work, and I'm so excited, and then the next thing hurts, and the next thing, elation back and forth. Life, what a fascinating playground. All right, and with that, what do we do? Now that we know this, now that we've learned this,
well, I think ARN is a pretty good example of talking about many things without an agenda, which means we don't exactly have a a clear bias or a set route.
Here's the whole thing that like people do, and other people do it this way, and we do it this way, and like this seems to work, and here's all the like cool variations of it, and like where we can go from here, and it's this wide open atmosphere, and this is like what happens when you stick yourself, and it's kind of cool. Isn't this cool? Yeah, pretty cool.